I learned a big lesson in setting boundaries in the context of dating, and we're going to talk about it today. And as someone who is usually pretty good at setting boundaries and have taught others how to set boundaries for years, this came as a surprise to me because I didn't see it clearly as a boundary issue. Now, before I share what happens, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. And it also signals to the podcast gods that this channel is worth recommending to others like you. So now let's dive into the juicy details of my love life. Actually, I'm not going to go into a lot of details out of respect for my partner, and I do have boundaries around what I share in terms of my relationships, but I am going to describe to you what happened because I think it's very relevant in terms of setting boundaries and how to understand when our boundaries have been crossed. So I'm going to describe to you what's been going on inside of me for the last few weeks because how we are feeling is always an indicator of what we need to work through and what we need to heal. So I've been in a fairly healthy relationship for the past 6-ish months, but as with any relationships, we do trigger each other. And that's not to say that there's toxicity going on or anything, but any relationship, especially our close, intimate relationships, they tend to be vehicles for bringing up our insecurities that when they are ready to be healed. So I'm not exactly sure when I started to change and when things started to shift inside of me, but I found myself trying to contort myself into something that I thought he wanted or needed. Now, this wasn't about changing my appearance or even showing up in a way that wasn't aligned with me. It was way more subtle than that. First, what I noticed was my uncertainty. I felt confused and unclear over seemingly small things, like was he hungry and just didn't want to inconvenience me when I offered to make him food, or was he legit not hungry? Or was he not messaging me after a hard talk because he just needed some time to process, or was he just busy with work? Or was that comment that he made that I wish you had messaged me sooner a criticism? Or was it just like he was bummed out because he had made other plans and he wished he could have seen me instead? So very little things, very insignificant things started to feel very shaky, very confusing, very unclear. So I had gone from feeling very stable in myself, very unwavering in how I was showing up in the relationship, to really off balance, really wobbly. And I'm not sure when that changed. I'm not sure what changed. I'm actually not even convinced that anything significant happened in the relationship to make me feel uncertain. Like, I can't pinpoint any one thing that he did to cause me to feel this way. I had simply fallen into an old pattern that was clearly meant for me to work through and heal at this point in our relationship. I just didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it as I was experiencing this uncertainty. So I'd fallen into this pattern of anticipating needs and trying to head off problems and being super vigilant. And that is a pattern that had served me well at one point in my life. I am sure of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have that pattern, right? Like, that pattern at one point kept me safe, but it was not serving me right now. It was making me feel really shaky in our relationship, and it was causing problems. And that was not good. And my doing this was actually making things worse. My uncertainty was causing him to be uncertain. And it was this really weird dynamic of like, we can't figure each other out. I feel like we're just like, our communication is not quite landing, and it was not good. It was a bit not good. So I want you to see this wobbliness, as I started to see this wobbliness, as me lacking boundaries. Because when I really dissected it, this pattern that I was in of trying to please him and anticipate needs was really a pattern where I believe that I was responsible for his emotions. And this is what people pleasing is, right? We anticipate the needs, we try to fix them, we try to rescue them. These are all examples of people pleasing, and that's related to a boundary issue. So when you recognize your feelings, you can start to recognize where the boundary has been crossed. And I know this is hard for some of us to grasp because we want to make the boundaries about the other person and what they've done wrong to make us feel this way. And we think that like when he does something wrong, then I need to set a boundary in order to change how he behaves so he stops behaving that way, so then I feel better. But boundaries are not about changing the other person. Boundaries are about protecting your space and your integrity and your self-respect and your self-worth. Now, my wobbliness was my response to the situations, to a variety of situations. That was my feelings. That was not anything that he was doing. He could have thrown anything my way, all sorts of crap. And had I been able to stay centered in who I am and not let those boundaries cross, not let those actions and behaviors mean something about me, or that I needed to do something different, I would have stayed centered. I would have held that boundary. I wouldn't have been affected by his behavior. And even that's to say, I don't even think it was his behavior that was causing this. It was just the dynamic that we had fallen into, or that I had fallen into, really. So if I had been in that center state, we could have just had a conversation about what was going on, where the lack of clarity was. As an example, was he actually hungry? Was he not hungry? And I could have been like a sturdy tree in the storm. Not saying that that dynamic was a storm, but like that is what this is, feeling very centered. Yes, there's some moving around, there's some, things hitting us, but that trunk of the tree, I want you to really imagine, like that is where we find our stability and our peace. So when I wasn't firmly rooted, when I was trying to anticipate what he needed, I was wobbly, I was second guessing myself, I was doubting myself, I was on shaky ground. I wasn't firmly rooted in who I was and where I stood. And the first step to healing is always simply to notice the pattern that you're in. So believe it or not, sometimes just noticing is enough. It's enough to heal and move through it. In this case, it wasn't really enough. There was a deeper layer that needed to happen, but noticing the pattern and understanding that I was acting in a way where I thought I was responsible for his emotions, that's fundamentally not true. We are never responsible for anyone else's emotions. We are only responsible for our own emotions. And that doesn't mean that gives us permission to just be a jerk and do whatever we want, my way or the highway. That's not a healthy dynamic for a relationship, because we can change our actions in a way to help the other person. So there is absolutely nuance to this, but I am not responsible for the way he feels. I'm responsible for my actions. And if there's something that needs to be changed, I can change it, but I'm not responsible for his emotions. And likewise, he is not responsible for my emotions. And when I get triggered, that is mine to heal. So what I had to do to move through with this with my boyfriend, I didn't even need him to shift out of this feeling of wobbliness and instability. I simply had to put it down. I had weighed myself down trying to please him. Trying to please him is what I will label this, but not once did he say that I was doing something wrong, that I needed to show up in a different way. This was an old pattern that was simply in me, that I needed to please him and contort myself and do this dance of vigilant anticipation. Now, I will say that even had he said, "You are not making me happy, you need to do this, and you need to start to anticipate my needs, you need to read between the lines, you need to do blah, 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 blah." Even if he had said that, it would still be my choice whether I took that on. And sometimes you can take stuff like that on without it compromising or affecting your boundaries. And other times that feels like a weight and a burden. So I want you to know that regardless of whether he asked for it or not, it is always your choice what you take on and what you choose to carry. And it is very nuanced. It's not black and white in relationships because, like I said, we can be responsible for our actions. We are responsible for our actions. And sometimes we can change to help the other person feel better. And that is a healthy dynamic in a relationship. And sometimes it's not a healthy dynamic. I want you to always remember that you're responsible for your actions, but you're not responsible for other people's emotions. And other people aren't responsible for your emotions. So there is a subtle but big difference between those two, actions and emotions. And when it comes to people pleasing and trying to anticipate needs, it's a special kind of effed up dynamic. When you're trying to anticipate someone's needs, compromising your own, and then when they don't receive it well, you get mad because you put your own needs aside to please them and they're not pleased, and then you're not showing up in terms of what you need or in your authentic self because you're more worried about his need than yours, and then he doesn't understand what you actually need, and everything is very messed up and very unclear. It is not a good vibe, the people-pleasing mentality. Put it down. Put it down. Put that weight that you are carrying, that you feel like you're responsible for someone else's emotions. You are not. You are not. That is not yours to carry. Put it down. Put it down, put it down, put it down. Your job is to show up in alignment with you. And when you do this, you are steady, you stop doubting yourself, and the calmness you feel inside is powerful. All you have to do then is anchor into the true essence of you, and everything becomes easier and more clear. And I wish I could give you step-by-step instructions in terms of how to put that stuff down, but that's going to be nuanced depending on the trigger insecurity that is coming up with you and the specific situation. But what I can give you is step-by-step instructions in terms of how to set a healthy boundary, and that is in my boundary course. So if you are interested in learning how to set strong, firm boundaries in a loving and kind way, then definitely sign up for my boundary course. Right now, it comes with 4 group coaching calls at a steal of a deal. So make sure you grab that before that goes away. But the first step is always, always, always noticing the pattern you're in. Notice what feelings come up in you and what is going on in your situation, and start to dissect that. And the rest is just focusing on how you want to show up versus your fears of what will happen or what might happen or could happen if you start to show up differently. What happens if you set a different boundary? So what you want versus your fear is really what you're working through. But regardless of the steps that you take, when you have a boundary issue, your first indicator is going to be how you feel, because your emotions are a signal that something is off. So don't ignore them, don't stuff them down. They'll just blow up later, and it could be more catastrophic than if you were to deal with them right now. So turn and face your emotions. They are guiding you towards better boundaries. They are guiding you towards a healthier relationship. They are guiding you towards healing. And remember, as always, to take it one step at a time. So I hope that helps. Regardless of where you are on your healing journey, I'm here supporting you and cheering you on. And if you need help as you're going through this, definitely reach out to see if one-on-one coaching is right for you. And I will see you next time.